go.
What's up, guys?
What's up? What's up? We are up to episode 6 of Launch Radio.
That's crazy.
I mean, time is flying. It literally. We've now had three different guests.
Yes.
And they've all been wonderful, amazing people.
What's cool is they're all very different perspectives on their own lives and where they've come and where they want to go and what they're working on. You know, everyone has their own little niche in life, and I love hearing from other people's stories. You know, I think it's really fascinating to me.
Just in where they come from and what drives them and makes them tick.
Yeah, it's great.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, and they were all fascinating. So today we are back, brother and sister, again, chit-chatting, having a talk.
We're not really brother and sister. We're just like, it's like adopted. You're like my brother from a different mother is what I say.
Pretty much. We are adopted brother and sister from, a brother from a different mother is a great way to put it. It's perfect. My twin sister from a different mother.
Like, I could tell him anything and just be like I have no qualms and like no concern telling him anything in my entire life, which is hilarious because I have only known you like not that long. But it's true. We were separated at birth.
Well, and it's crazy, and we can say this again just because the fact, we met each other 12 years ago, 15 years
almost
ago.
13, yeah.
I don't even know if we've talked about the history of it.
Yeah.
And then we kind of kept in touch over the years, then got back in touch a few months ago. And
it's almost like, I think it's been like 7 months when we got in touch. Maybe a year. Isn't that crazy, right?
Wow, yeah.
All right, enough about us. Enough about you, Geoff. God.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to hear about you.
We'll move on to the more...
The more pressing matters.
So we're episode 6.
Yes.
Do you want to introduce it today?
Yeah. You know, Geoff sent me this really great tweet. It was like a month ago?
Yeah,
I want to say. And you sent it to me. It was a tweet from this woman called Erin Brookes, and you're like, "Wow, isn't this interesting?" And I think you were waiting for my response as like a men's advocate to say something than what my response actually was. So I'll read the tweet and then I'll tell you what my response was, and then we can kind of go from there. So this is from Erin Brookes. She tweeted out, in all my years of being a feminist, I have not met a single feminist who hates men. And in all my years of being a woman, I have not met a single woman who isn't afraid of men on some level. It's not hate, it's fear, and the difference is important. So when you sent it to me, I think you were waiting for my reaction of like, ugh, these women. Which sometimes that is my reaction, depending on what they're saying. In this particular case, I was like, yeah, she's absolutely correct. And you wrote back like, wait, what? And you were really shocked by my answer. I'm like, yeah, I've never met a woman who hates men. It's a fear we have, whether we talk about it or not, whether we feel it on a daily basis. Like right now, I'm in a room with 2 other men right now, right? We have Mo, our photographer, and Geoff, the co-host. Am I sitting here scared to death? No. It's more of the way women are brought up, in the sense that when we're told from a little girl, to be fearful of strangers, don't take candy from strangers, don't talk to strangers, run the other way. Yes, there are women that abduct, unfortunately, girls and boys, but the vast majority of violence against kids is from men. So little girls were brought up to just fear men. And if you look historically speaking, from the beginning of time, women were all the vast majority of violence against women has been from men, from their male counterparts. So there's always been this weird innate sort of fear. Like when I walk down the street and I'm by myself and there's another guy, I get a little sick to my stomach. And meanwhile, like, yo, I'm strong as fuck. Like, I'd probably take the guy down, but it doesn't matter. That fear of like what that man could do is there,
And where is so fascinating. And where do you think that it? You said it's just been going on obviously for years and years and years. Where do you think it? What are the roots of that? Where do you think that comes from? How far back?
I think, I mean, if you even look at like the medieval times, you know, and even, my God, up and through the 50s and 60s, I mean, women were institutionalized for PMS. Yeah. I mean, literally, they were shock treatments. And we're talking like 1950s and 60s, you know what I mean? Not that long ago. They were put in institutions because they got pregnant out of wedlock. You know, so there's always been this very violent past against women. In the medieval times, women were burned alive. I mean, literally, this stuff is, you know, in textbooks. And when you read about it as a kid, and it's pretty bad. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you start to get this perception that men are kind of scary a little bit, you know, and what they can do. They have a lot of power, and they always have. And I think that's why you see this pendulum this shift where women are like, no, like, we're strong too. You can't do X to us, like, because we've always felt this like very inferior status between us and men, you know.
And where do you think, it's so interesting, where do you think that the perception, I mean, obviously there's a lot of grounds and validity in it, but there's also misconception. And,
yeah, for sure.
And I think that what's interesting is how much of it do you think is a misconception and how much of it do you think is really happening? Are people misinterpreting what could be a great guy as someone who's not because of that history? Do you think that's happening more in our society now than we realize?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you look at, you know, post-Me Too movement, and when I talk to men and helping them through just society and what masculinity is and all that kind of stuff, they're really scared of being called out from a woman and if they maybe hug them the wrong way, or there's this weird shift now of perception where it's like, are all men rapists? Do all men assault women? You know, I think there's this weird perception going on, you know, that all men are bad. And like, just like when there was, and there still sort of is, this perception of like all women are crazy. You know what I mean? It's when you generalize, you've got some massive problems when it comes to perception, you know, and like, is perception reality and that type of thing. So, right. Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think there's a historical just sense that women have of like what men have been able to do, still do to this day, of domestic violence. Yeah. Statistically speaking, when there's domestic violence, it's like 90% or something of like women being assaulted from men, you know, in terms of like the domestic violence. So it's hard to, you know, get over those statistics. However, to your point, does that mean all men are bad? No, but I think it's being human enough to be, you know, and smart enough and enlightened enough to not have that innate fear of every single man that you meet. Right.
And do you think that's so interesting? Do you think that we're making progress in that? Do you think that there's been steps that people are coming to understand that better, or do you think as a society we still aren't? Like, where do you feel we sit right now in society as a whole as far as progressing on that?
I think it's hard. You know, advertising runs the world, right? Without advertising, nothing exists, literally. And to have television shows and movies and all, and the entertainment in society, so society is almost built around advertising. So when you look at advertising, you specifically, Geoff, are put into a specific demographic. Right? You live in Los Angeles, you're a male, you're X age, you're front, and they start to get really even particular into your behavioral of who you are. And then you're put into a category, and I'm put into a category, right? And then advertising is pushed out to you specifically, right? So advertising, because it runs the world, creates these categories for everyone. So whenever, you know what I mean? So So they then create advertising around that. So now you'll see advertising that shows men and sitcoms to be kind of dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Mm-hmm. And women are now like the cool, and they're the ones who are like, taking charge, mm-hmm. and that inherently is a massive problem as it comes to society, because we're watching that. It's feeding these massive misperceptions that we may have about the other gender.
Yeah.
I mean, I would argue that instead of categorizing people, the whole thing of like, be yourself, that's a bunch of bullshit. You can't. Advertising in society doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? They're going to place you into a bucket, whatever that is. You can't just be whoever you want to be. It just doesn't work that way. I would argue that we have to open up the conversation between both genders. It doesn't have to be one team versus the other.
I think that it's communication. I think
100%.
that communication is the root of it all. And instead of looking at the other gender and feeling fear or feeling hate or feeling any of those, it's about both sides communicating better than they are. And
like for you to send me that tweet and then my response, and that's shocking to you, that challenges your own beliefs of how women view men,
read the last line of the tweet again, so people can there it is.
So it says it's not hate, it's fear, and the difference is important.
Right. Because the misconception with men is they think we automatically think that that women hate us, or that there's hate, that it's rooted in hate, and that's not what surprised me is that's not what it's about.
Right.
It's really that there's this fear that has rooted that is valid in some regard, because of history, and to stop that, we have to work on, to stop the misconceptions and to make progress, we have to work on the communication between the two.
For sure.
And I think that's what you're saying.
Yep.
Right? And
one team instead of two teams. It's not man versus woman. We're all humans. That's why I don't consider myself a feminist. I'm a humanist, which encompasses feminism. But it's all about the human aspect. It's much broader than just like female rights. There's men's rights too. So how do you encompass all that? That's humanism,
How do you think we can, what could be done to improve that? Do you think that as far as communication, do you think there's certain steps that could be taken? Do you think that it's such a tricky thing to it's easy to say we need to all communicate better.
Right, sure.
How do we get people to communicate better? Besides saying that, I mean, obviously that's a good message to spread, have better communication, but are there events people could have? Are there messages, rather than having messages just, for one gender, messages that promote communication with both, stuff like that? Is that what we need to do to get past that? What do you think?
Yeah, I think there needs to be trailblazers out there, and there are, that challenge your belief. The other night, you might see my post there. Because I'm a men's advocate, that's a very difficult position to be in when it comes to other women. Yeah. Because they are like, what are you doing? You're supposed to be on our team. And it's like, I'm on the human team. Yeah, I'm not I'm not on a team. I'm helping a gender that needs the help right now, She came up to me and said, and I don't know her well at all, I've met her once before, but she came up to me and said, I really appreciate, and I have to tell you how much I thank you for what you do, because I'm in a 19-year marriage. She's like in her 50s. Yeah. And she's like, it's impacted my marriage so much. You've challenged my beliefs of what men need. And it was like the compliment of the century to have a woman understand what I do, and that it's changing, and it's challenging your own belief system a little bit and opening it up.
Which is huge.
Oh my God, huge. That's kind of what's needed. And not to toot my own horn of what I do, but there are people like that.
You can toot your hey for Kira. It's amazing.
Hey for Kira and recognize, brush shoulder off. No, I'm just kidding. But that's what we need is people that are going to be balls of the wall and just hey, I stand out, and I'm going to say what I really feel and not just go along with the herd. I mean, there's got to be the black sheep that goes the other way.
Trailblazer.
It's got to be the trailblazer. That's how revolutions start. That's how things get changed. There's a reason why the world is not seen as flat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
that's right.
When that came out, he was mocked that it was, and you're like, no way, the world is definitely flat. There's no way it's round.
The Trailblazer is always, more often than not, the crazy one at the start. Crazy,
100%.
Doesn't know what they're talking about, out of their element, and that's often the door to progress, to a push forward. And so I find that I think we've got a ways to go.
Yeah.
I think that we've got a ways to go, but I think that getting that message, addressing that message more and putting that message out there is crucial. That we're all on the same team, and it's not war with the separate teams.
Correct.
And it works both ways, actually, in that, I feel that, I was watching a podcast recently where someone was talking about how in the work world, a lot of guys, now feel self-conscious about, interviewing. This guy literally said he feels self-conscious about, going on interviews with women or shaking hands, or like there's fear on that side too. And because he's worried that there could be a charge, or that she could come after him about something,
Right.
and that's again though on a certain team, and it's a misconception in that direction as well.
Right.
And I couldn't believe hearing him say this, because I was like, wow, like he's like I won't even he's like, if a woman contacted me wanting, I couldn't believe when he said like wanting advice or something, he's like, I would be hesitant to do it because I would be afraid that she would do something to take a charge against me or something. Like he was that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So do you feel that that's like a post-Me Too
Yes.
kind of thing that's going on, in terms of like, now we've like there are, whether it's accurate, charges against someone or not,
Right.
it's still scary as it is for men to worry that women have that kind of power to just be like, maybe misconceive a situation.
Yeah. It easily makes it,
or vindictively do it, I actually have friends that this has happened to, and it's unfortunate because it overshadows the people that actually have had sexual assault and that actually have had sexual harassment, which is the vast majority are true, accurate charges that are brought against. However, there's this, like, I think to your point, there's this just like scared element within the male community of doing something wrong.
And I think that's where it becomes a very complicated issue, because that stuff does happen, this sexual assault, and that, like, it really happens. Yeah. So and it's very scary. And so there's good reason for those movements that happen, but it also leads to people to misconceptions on both sides. And like his reaction to that is so, like, I didn't even realize that there were men that thought that, or that would think that. Yeah. And that's like far on that end. But like at first I was like, he wouldn't take an interview with her, like, what the hell? But then he explained why, and I was just like, wow, there's people that are like, there's got men that are like fearing that now, because they're worried that they're going to get a charge against them if they hug the wrong way, or if they shake hands, or anything.
But I have to imagine the dating life. I don't have to worry about that anymore. However, not for now, but yeah. I have to imagine dating in LA has got to be fucking brutal for men, though, right? Yeah. So, and doesn't it take the romance out of it, though, to not know, like, you're like, hey, do you consent to me holding your hand? Like, is it at that point? I mean, I think it's case by case with each person, each couple on each side, but I have to think that it's having an impact on dating, on love life, on if a person feels that they should go on a date with a person. And I find this ironic also, because we're in the age of Tinder and Bumble and just swiping left or right and going on quick dates and getting together with each other. But, which is kind of ironic, because there's also this fear people have on both sides. Right. Like, we're quicker to get together with the swiping. It's like an instant gratification. I never did online dating. Have you done online dating? I've never done it. I have done online dating. I've heard some really horror stories from it. That's why I just never did it. I was like, I don't give a fuck. I've had a mix of experiences, I would say. Some good, some bad. There's a full spectrum of how it affects people. But I just find it
so, interesting that, that is happening, that there's literally a fear on both sides in this. And it bothers me that those misconceptions are there. At the same time, I'm empathetic to people who've actually had, sexual assault or had different things that have happened to them. But it's tricky as to how to make everyone have an understanding and get along. It's a very tricky thing to do. And I wish that we could find, and I think what you're doing is a great step towards that by with men. And I think we have to figure out a way for both sides to understand each other and to get along.
And that's where I see my purpose in life, to be honest, and that's my passion in that. And I can't tell you how grateful I was to hear from this woman, because it's one thing to get a compliment from a man saying, what you said today really impacted my life and your content's really, valuable to me. It's another when the woman's like, you've challenged my own beliefs to make me a better partner to my man.
That's, yeah.
Talk about the instant, that's priceless. You can't pay for that. Do you know what I mean? That's incredible. That's what's needed. People just need to open their minds up a little bit. I think there's a lot of sensitivity. Everyone's very, very sensitive right now.
Yeah.
Like that Christmas song that came out, or, that old Christmas song of the nightmare. Yeah. And that was just they were pulling it off the radio. This is a song that was in the 1952 or something. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And they're like, well, nowadays it's seen. And it's everyone needs to just kind of calm down a little bit. And not be so touchy and sensitive, and maybe open up the conversation and have a dialogue with the other sex and actually learn about things from one another instead of pigeonholing them or putting them into a category.
I think I think how you approach, I think the direction of approach is what's critical, and how you the angle you come from when you're addressing these things. And so for you, how have men's reaction been to everything you're doing? What's the reaction on their side? Has it been?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting when people, I think, if you haven't, I'm sure everyone has probably maybe seen my Instagram, but maybe not. It's Geoff Kira, but, so I'm a men's advocate, a woman being a men's advocate is very interesting because there isn't really any out there.
Which is great. Trailblazer.
Yeah, it's kind of insane, and I do it because I'm passionate about it, not because there's a niche for it, but because I actually am very empathetic to where men are in today's society, and I myself have a lot more masculine energy, so I understand men a bit more than women, even though I have lots of female friends and I love women, but right now men need a voice, and they can't be the ones that stand up and say we matter too, because no one will listen to that. So I can be that voice for them and say, hey, men matter too. They need this, and people will raise their eyebrows a little bit and actually listen. So the way I describe my brand is it's like I'm like a walking Playboy magazine. I'm not the images, I'm not the articles, I'm the entire magazine. So you're brought in from the imagery and the photography and whatever, but you stay for the content and what it's telling you, and a lot of people would think that I get tons of dick pics and inappropriate comments. And honestly, I've gotten maybe one or two, over a course of a year. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
that metaphor sums it up so well, though, with the magazine, though, understanding what you're all about.
Yeah, because I model, but I also I'm not a silent model who just sits there and writes peaches, not to each to their own. Everybody has their own thing. I just have something I want to say, and the reaction that I've gotten from men is really incredible. I mean, I take 3 to 4 hours out of my day every single day and answer every single DM, because that person is a human being. Yeah. And they deserve a response from me because they're writing to me. Yeah. So I spend a lot of time talking to men. Acknowledge them and validate that their opinions matter, that they matter as a human being, and they may not feel that from their own personal relationship. So I think they respect that to the point where they wouldn't degrade it to a sense of sending me like inappropriate stuff, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, we hold you a little differently than just like some woman posting nude shots.
Yeah, and at the same, but you doing that, you're also just, I mean, you're representing what you're all about by doing that. And you mentioned the word respect, and I think that respect is such a important thing in all of this, in the dialogue, people respecting each other.
Yeah.
And it goes all the way back to the problem where people don't respect each other. We have to understand that as a society and as humanity, and really seek to learn and understand and to have more empathy for one another. There it is. Perfect message. She's wearing a shirt for people that are listening. Make empathy great again. But yeah, I think that, and when you responded to the tweet when I sent that to you, I mean, immediately, yes, as you said, it was mind blown. Like, wow, like I had one of those moments where like, whoa, like it's so easy to think that they're hating and they're not. There's fear. It comes from a different place. And so if we could get, if there's one big thing people could get out of today's podcast, it's to step back and think about their own perceptions of these things.
For sure. Right? And I think the other thing is, and this could be in its own topic of itself, is that, because we live in a world of screens, it's a buffer between us and another human being. Mm-hmm. So it's very easy for us to say something really unconscionable to another person that is so terrible that you're like, you would never say that in person. You know what I mean? But there's this buffer that you think you can say such horrible things, and you have to realize that that's another human being you're talking to, whether it's through a computer or phone, that's a human. Yeah. Right? And you have to give respect to other people if you would like respect yourself. Yeah. And just to know that everyone is going through something, you have no like at all thought of what's going on in their life, know? So, and just to use that as a teaching that
every one of those people you see in social media and that are sending messages,
going through something.
They're going through something. They're people. They're living, breathing people.
Men go through things, women go through things, and that's what I try to always talk about. Is like, hey, men like compliments too. You know what I mean? Like, it's not all about like, well, what are you doing for me? It's like, what are you doing for everyone else? Like, look at yourself in the mirror. What are you doing to help better society? It's not all about you. Get off, get out of your own head and just like help other people and understand other people.
And I do think recently, in the past 10, 15 years, as you said, I think that I do think that things in many ways have gotten worse in some regards, just with everything that's happening with the country and the world and everything right now. However, a lot of the times, things often, chaos is the precedent to great change happening. And when there's chaos and when there's all that's happening, it's kind of like the light is darkest just before the dawn thing. Like, it's right on the precipice of perhaps change and better things. So I think people need to remain optimistic that it will get better, but I think our communication between male and female has to ultimately improve, and that's what we have to work on.
100%. And I think, that's why we do podcasts. That's why we have, that's why we do what we're doing.
That's why we do it.
Is to just kind of open up your mind a little bit, explore, grow. You don't have to be so narrow-minded. Take the blinders off a little bit. See what else is out there.
People to just like think about how they're perceiving things.
Yeah.
In their world, and what they think about something might not always be what it seems. Things aren't always what they seem, and to get people to open up more. Yeah.
It's so easy for us to inflict pain on someone else than to take it in. Yeah. So, for us to think like, oh, that person's being such a bitch to me. It's like, you have no idea what that person's going through in their life right now. Yeah. That person could have lost their mother today. That person could have lost, you have no idea. Stop taking it so personally. Yeah. Not everything is about you, shockingly enough. You know what I mean? Like, get over yourself.
Yeah. It's that ego inside people.
And that has to do with a lot of women and a lot of men who are just like this like combative thing, and they take things so fucking personally, and you're just like, hey, just calm down.
Yeah.
Let's just all kind of talk about it a little bit. Open up your perception is not reality. Mm-hmm. Your mind will create all kinds of interesting things and rabbit holes that aren't even remotely real.
Yeah.
You've got to get control of what your mind's telling you.
Mental prisons, I've heard it called. Like literally you get stuck in things and you need to get out and for sure. Well, I hope that people understand, like I hope they got something from this today, and I hope that people really connected and could relate to what we were saying there. And then most importantly, I hope it made them think a little bit about their own perceptions of things.
Yeah, let's hope.
And maybe Erin, I don't know her name. Who
tweeted well. What is her name again?
I think it was Erin something.
I should follow her. Erin Brock. Erin Brookes.
Erin Brookes.
Yeah. The tweet that from Erin Brookes.
That's who I saw it on and tweeted it to Kira.
Yeah.
So I think that's good. I think that was quite a good topic.
What, are you done?
I mean,
are you done with me for the day? You're like, okay, Kira, done.
We're gonna keep going. We could just talk for hours and hours and hours.
Literally could talk for hours and hours.
So we have to try to gauge how long we want to go for in the early going.
Plus, everyone has other things they want to do in their life today, other than listen to me and you banter about today's topics.
I guess they do. They do have other
shockingly,
things, right?
But yeah, I think they do have other things to do on their plate.
Mo has other things to do.
Right.
We have to. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining. We don't know who we're having next week.
So next week we have a few guests that we're working on, some surprise guests, because we're still lining it up. Yeah. So we don't have anybody set yet, but it's in the works.
Yes, I'm excited for it. So stay tuned. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, everyone. This is episode 6. Geoff and Kira launch radio, and we will see you next week.
Bye, guys.